It was a bright, sunny afternoon, and the mall was buzzing with the usual crowd of shoppers, families, and teenagers. The scent of fresh coffee mingled with the faint aroma of new clothing from the stores. Among the crowd, a man walked casually, blending in as if he were any ordinary visitor. But he wasn't ordinary. It was Ozzy Osbourne, the legendary rock star, known worldwide for his music, charisma, and unforgettable stage presence. Dressed in a simple hoodie, worn jeans, and sunglasses, Ozzy hoped for just one thing: a quiet day to enjoy some normalcy. No cameras, no screaming fans, no flashing lights. Just a stroll through the mall, maybe a quick stop at the bookstore, and then a cup of coffee. But sometimes, even the simplest plans don't go as expected. As Ozzy passed a high-end fashion store, the manager noticed him. He squinted, unsure of who this casually dressed man was. Without hesitation, the manager approached, his expression stern and judgmental. "Excuse me, you can't just walk around here like that," he said, his tone sharp and commanding. Ozzy looked up calmly, his voice steady and polite. "I'm just browsing, sir, no trouble at all." The manager's eyes narrowed. "I don't care who you are, you can't just come in here acting like you own the place." Ozzy's lips curled into a faint, polite smile. "I assure you, I'm just a customer." The surrounding shoppers began to notice the tension. Some slowed down, curious about the confrontation. Others instinctively reached for their phones, sensing that something unusual was unfolding. The manager, however, didn't back down. He stepped closer, his body language aggressive, as if trying to assert control over someone he clearly underestimated. Ozzy's assistant hovered nearby, glancing nervously at the growing crowd. But Ozzy remained calm, his eyes were steady, his posture relaxed. He wasn't angry, he wasn't threatening. Yet the quiet strength in him was undeniable, a presence that commanded attention without demanding it. The crowd murmured among themselves, sensing the conflict. Questions ran through their minds: who is this man? Why is the manager acting like this? And then, just as the tension reached its peak, Ozzy did something that would leave everyone in the mall completely stunned. The manager's glare grew sharper, his arms crossed like a wall of authority. "I said, you can't just walk around here looking suspicious," he snapped, taking a step closer. His voice carried through the mall, sharp enough to make heads turn. Ozzy remained calm, his hands relaxed at his sides. "I'm just browsing," he said again, his tone measured, almost melodic in contrast to the manager's aggression. "I don't want any trouble." But the manager didn't hear it that way. "Trouble," he scoffed. "You look like you're up to something. Maybe I should call security." At that moment, a few nearby shoppers paused, sensing that something unusual was happening. A teenager with a phone in his hand nudged his friend. "Hey, isn't that?" His voice trailed off as he zoomed in on Ozzy through the camera. Within seconds, several people pulled out their phones, quietly recording. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Who is that? Why is the manager acting like that?" The manager noticed the attention and became defensive. "Everyone, step back! This is private." His voice boomed, but his words only drew more eyes. Ozzy's assistant stepped forward, nervously tugging at his sleeve. "Sir, maybe we should just leave." Ozzy shook his head slightly, his gaze fixed on the manager. "No. I want this handled properly, calmly, but properly." The manager leaned in closer, his face inches from Ozzy's. "I don't care who you are. You're not special. You think fame gives you rights. You're mistaken." A hush fell over the crowd. People were filming now, openly, some whispering excitedly, others muttering about the unfair treatment they were witnessing. The energy in the mall shifted. The tension was palpable. Ozzy didn't raise his voice, he didn't make a sudden move. Instead, he looked directly at the manager, his calm presence somehow louder than the man's anger. "Respect is earned through actions, not appearances," Ozzy said quietly. Yet everyone around could hear him. "And today you're showing none." The manager's face twisted in frustration, unable to respond. His words faltered, but he tried to maintain control. I'm just doing my job." "Yes, and jobs don't give anyone the right to humiliate others," Ozzy replied, steady and unwavering. Shoppers whispered among themselves, some nodding in agreement, some murmuring in shock. Phones continued to capture the confrontation from every angle. The mall's atmosphere was tense, charged with anticipation, as if everyone were holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. One bystander, a young woman holding her child, leaned forward and whispered to her friend, "Why is he treating him like this? He hasn't done anything!" The manager, now clearly flustered and realizing that the crowd was turning against him, took a step back, glaring, but his authority was slipping. Ozzy's calm demeanor and measured words were quietly turning the tide of power. Pop-up. Have you ever been wrongly judged or humiliated in public? Comment below where this is happening. We want to hear your story. The tension reached a boiling point. It was clear this confrontation was far from over, and Ozzy's next move would leave everyone, including the manager, completely stunned. The manager's voice now echoed through the mall, louder and more aggressive. I've told you cannot behave like this! Step aside or I'll call security! Ozzy's assistant instinctively stepped closer, worry etched across his face. Sir, maybe we should just leave, he whispered. But Ozzy shook his head ever so slightly, calm but resolute. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about respect, something far bigger than a single mall incident. The manager, sensing weakness, tried a new tactic: intimidation. He leaned in, his tone sharp, as though proximity alone could assert dominance. Don't think you can just ignore me, because whatever you think you are... Ozzy didn't flinch. He stood tall, shoulders relaxed, exuding a quiet authority that seemed to grow with each passing second. I'm not ignoring you, he said evenly. I'm giving you a chance to act fairly. Shoppers gathered, sensing the intensity of the confrontation. Phones were raised everywhere, capturing every word, every movement. A mother gently held her child behind her, whispering to calm them, while others murmured their disbelief. Why is he being treated like this? The manager grew visibly frustrated. His attempts at intimidation were failing. He glanced at the growing crowd, realizing that his authority was slipping, but he refused to back down. Step aside or I'll have you escorted out. Ozzy met the manager's gaze with a quiet firmness. Do you honestly believe treating someone like this proves your authority? Respect is earned through fairness, not fear. A ripple of murmurs passed through the audience. The mall was no longer just a shopping center. It had become a stage, with every bystander a witness to injustice unfolding. The tension escalated further when Ozzy's assistant whispered, Sir, they're filming everything. Ozzy's calm eyes scanned the crowd. He didn't panic. He understood the power of the moment. Every phone pointed toward them meant the truth would be seen. The world would witness how a global icon handled humiliation with grace. The manager, now visibly rattled, tried another tactic. You're just a troublemaker. People like you cause problems everywhere. Ozzy's response was measured, firm, and dignified. I am just a person like anyone else, and I deserve the same respect you expect for yourself. The crowd leaned in, sensing the subtle shift. The once dominant manager now looked smaller, his authority crumbling under the weight of his own arrogance. Shoppers whispered to each other, some nodding, some shaking their heads in disbelief. Phones continued to roll, capturing each tense second. A young man in the crowd whispered to his friend, barely audible, Why is he acting like he's better than Ozzy? He has no idea who he's dealing with, but Ozzy didn't raise his voice, he didn't gloat. He simply stood firm, demonstrating that true strength comes from patience and dignity, not anger or threats. The tension was now unbearable. People were holding their breath, watching, waiting. Everyone knew something significant was about to happen, a moment that would leave the manager stunned and the crowd completely in awe. And at that precise moment, someone in the crowd squinted, slowly realizing, wait, isn't that Ozzy Osbourne? The whisper traveled like wildfire. The mall fell into a hush, every pair of eyes now focused on him. The ordinary day had turned into something extraordinary. The stage was set for the reveal, and what would happen next would shock everyone in the mall completely. The mall was silent, yet buzzing with an unspoken tension. Every pair of eyes now focused on Ozzy Osbourne. The manager, still fuming and clearly trying to maintain control, had no idea what was about to unfold. A middle-aged shopper, holding a shopping bag in one hand and a phone in the other, squinted at Ozzy. Wait, no, could it really be him? She muttered. Her voice trembled slightly with disbelief. Her whisper was like a spark in dry grass. Another shopper, standing nearby, tilted his head and said, I think that's Ozzy Osbourne. Phones were raised instantly. The crowd began murmuring, the whispers growing louder with every passing second. That's Ozzy, the Prince of Darkness. Someone shouted under their breath. The rock legend, another added. The manager, oblivious to the crowd's reaction, continued to scold, waving his arms. I don't care who you think you are. You can't just... But the words faltered in his throat as a wave of recognition swept through the bystanders. The people recording began to zoom in, capturing the unmistakable features of the rock icon, the black sunglasses, the casual hoodie, the calm yet piercing gaze. A teenager, eyes wide, whispered to his friend, "Dude, this is insane, he's Ozzy Osbourne." The crowd shifted. Some people leaned forward, craning their necks to get a better view, while others pointed quietly, awe-struck. Murmurs turned into hushed exclamations. "That's him! That's the real Ozzy Osbourne!" The manager, however, seemed completely unaware. His arrogance and narrow-minded focus kept him blind to the reality around him. He continued his tirade, gesturing angrily. "You think fame gives you rights? You're mistaken!" Ozzy, standing calmly in the center of the unfolding chaos, made no sudden movements. He didn't raise his voice and he didn't declare his identity. He simply let the tension simmer, allowing the crowd to realize who they were witnessing on their own. The effect was electric. The crowd's energy shifted. Where there was once nervous tension, now there was excitement and anticipation. Every phone in the area captured not just Ozzy, but the stark contrast between his calm dignity and the manager's floundering aggression. A young woman whispered, holding her child behind her back, "He hasn't even said anything yet, and he already owns this moment." Indeed, Ozzy's presence alone was enough. He radiated quiet confidence and humility, a striking contrast to the manager's bluster. Then, almost simultaneously, multiple people in the crowd began whispering louder. "Yes, it is him! That's Ozzy Osbourne! No way, he's standing right here in front of us!" His calm. "But you can feel his power just by looking at him!" The manager froze. He glanced around and noticed people pointing their phones at him, not Ozzy. Some of the shoppers had started whispering sarcastically, questioning his behavior. "Maybe now you'll learn what respect looks like." Ozzy's assistant exhaled quietly, a mixture of relief and admiration, realizing that the crowd was finally aware of who they were witnessing. And just like that, the ordinary mall afternoon had transformed into a moment of reckoning. The tension was no longer just about unfair treatment, it was about the stark contrast between humility and arrogance, fame and ignorance. The stage was now set. The recognition of Ozzy Osbourne by the crowd meant that the confrontation had reached its climactic turning point. The next moment would decide everything. The humiliation of the manager, the awe of the crowd, and Ozzy's legendary calm authority shining through, a lesson in dignity that everyone in the mall would remember forever. The air in the mall was electric. The crowd had realized who stood before them, and the atmosphere shifted. Whispers turned into soft exclamations, phones captured every angle, and the once dominant manager now felt the weight of hundreds of eyes scrutinizing him. The manager tried to regain control. "Enough of this nonsense!" "You think just because people recognize you?" Ozzy interrupted him calmly, his voice steady but commanding, cutting through the tension like a blade. "I don't need recognition to be treated with respect." The words hung in the air. People leaned in, some mouths slightly open, sensing that this wasn't just a confrontation about a mall. This was a lesson in dignity, humility, and human decency. The manager, now visibly flustered, raised his hands as if to assert authority. I am the manager here!" "You have no right to." Ozzy didn't raise his voice. He didn't yell. He simply stepped forward, his presence alone amplifying every word he spoke. Respect is not something you demand, it's something you give. Treating someone unfairly because of how they look, how they dress, or who they are, that shows weakness, not strength. A hush fell over the crowd. Even mall security stopped pacing, unsure of what to do. All eyes were on Ozzy, captivated by his calm authority. His demeanor was a stark contrast to the manager's flustered aggression. "You have a choice in this moment." Ozzy continued, his tone firm but controlled. "You can continue humiliating people, or you can step back and do what is right. It is never wrong to treat someone with dignity." The manager's face flushed crimson. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He was being undone not by physical force, but by the quiet power of calm confidence and moral authority. Shoppers whispered to each other, barely containing their excitement. "He's incredible, he didn't even yell. He's making him look small without touching him." Ozzy's assistant watch struck as the situation that had seemed hopeless only minutes before began to turn. The crowd's energy shifted completely, their sympathies were undeniable. The manager, once the center of power, now looked like a small, insignificant figure in front of someone who had earned respect without demanding it. You see, Ozzy continued, looking directly at the manager, strength isn't in intimidation, strength is in humility. Authority isn't in raising your voice. Authority is in how you treat others. At that moment, phones in the crowd started live streaming. Comments were already appearing online.
This is unbelievable.
Ozzy is teaching a masterclass in dignity.
The manager has no idea what hit him?
The manager tried one last desperate attempt at control.
I am in charge here. You.
Ozzy shook his head, not aggressively, but with gentle firmness. Today is not about me. It's about what's right, and everyone watching knows who is right here. The words sank deep. The crowd erupted in soft applause, their whispers now laced with admiration. Even the manager, realizing the tide had turned, could only step back momentarily speechless. In that moment, Ozzy Osbourne, without raising a hand or shouting a single insult, had turned humiliation into a lesson in respect and human decency. The mall, once a place of tension, now resonated with awe. The stage was set for the next phase, the full revelation where the crowd and even security would fully recognize the legend before them, leaving the manager completely exposed. What happened next shocked everyone in the mall and online. The tension in the mall had reached its peak. The crowd's whispers had grown louder, and every phone in the area was pointed directly at Ozzy Osbourne. But the manager still refused to believe what was happening. In his mind, this was just another ordinary customer causing trouble. Then a voice rang out from the crowd.
Wait, that's Ozzy Osbourne, the rock legend!
The declaration spread like wildfire. Shoppers nudged each other, some laughing in disbelief, others staring wide-eyed.
Oh my God, it is him! No way, that's Ozzy Osbourne in person!
The manager froze. His face went pale, his jaw slackening. He had been so confident a few minutes ago, certain of his authority, that he hadn't even considered who he was dealing with. Now, the reality slammed into him like a tidal wave. People in the crowd started whispering urgently to one another, pointing their phones and cameras at the stunned manager. You've humiliated him. One teenager muttered under their breath.
He's Ozzy Osbourne! You can't just treat him like that!
Ozzy's assistant, standing slightly behind him, let out a quiet laugh, a mix of relief and admiration. Ozzy himself didn't smile broadly. He remained calm, composed and dignified. He didn't gloat, and he didn't need to. The truth spoke louder than any words could. The mall's atmosphere shifted instantly. People began clapping softly, murmuring in awe and admiration. The manager, now aware that he had humiliated a global icon, shifted nervously on his feet. His authority had crumbled, replaced by embarrassment and shame. Ozzy finally spoke, his voice calm but firm, cutting through the murmurs. Respect isn't about fame or power, he said. It's about treating every person with dignity, no matter who they are. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Phones flashed, capturing the moment for social media, and the video would soon be everywhere, shared millions of times. The manager, realizing he was the center of ridicule, could only stammer, trying to defend himself. I didn't know. Ozzy held up a hand, gently stopping him. It's all right. Learn from this. Treat people fairly. That's all I ask. The crowd went silent for a moment, struck by the sheer humility of Ozzy Osbourne. Despite the manager's aggression and the public embarrassment he had endured, Ozzy had handled everything with grace. He had shown strength without raising a hand, authority without yelling, and humility without apology. The bystanders recorded every second, whispering excitedly.
That was amazing, he didn't even get angry!
Look at the way he handled that pure class. Security staff who had been unsure how to act now nodded respectfully. Even the manager, now fully humbled, stood quietly, unable to speak, as the reality of the situation sank in. In a few short minutes, an ordinary afternoon at the mall had transformed into a lesson in human decency, humility, and respect. Ozzy Osbourne's calm authority and dignity had not only exposed the manager's arrogance, but had also inspired everyone present. As Ozzy and his assistant began walking away, the crowd parted respectfully, some applauding, others filming in awe. Social media notifications would soon explode, spreading the story worldwide. The truth was undeniable. The man who had been humiliated was a legend, and the lesson he imparted was timeless. Respect and dignity always triumph over arrogance and prejudice. By evening, the mall had emptied, but the story of what happened was just beginning. Every phone in the crowd had recorded the confrontation. Clips of Ozzy Osbourne standing calmly, responding to the aggressive manager, and finally revealing his identity were flooding social media. Within hours, the videos went viral. Millions of views poured in from around the world. Comments flooded in. Ozzy handled that perfectly. This is the definition of dignity and respect. That manager got exactly what he deserved, publicly embarrassed. News outlets picked up the story. Headlines read, Ozzy Osbourne shows calm authority after public humiliation. Rock legend teaches lesson in respect to aggressive mall manager, and mall confrontation goes viral. Ozzy's dignity wins. The manager, now fully aware of his actions, faced backlash. Online discussions condemned his behavior, and the mall's corporate office had to step in to manage the fallout. Emails and messages poured in, reminding the management that humiliating a customer, even unknowingly, could damage reputations. Meanwhile, Ozzy's fans celebrated his calm response. They praised him not just for being a legendary musician, but for demonstrating what true strength and humility look like. Clips of the confrontation were shared across TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube Shorts, each view reinforcing the lesson. Humility and respect always triumph over arrogance. Even in interviews later that night, Ozzy remained humble. He downplayed the incident. "I wasn't angry," he told reporters. "I just wanted to show that everyone deserves respect, no matter who they are." That's the lesson we should all remember. The story resonated beyond the music world. People everywhere were inspired by how someone famous and powerful could handle an unfair situation without resorting to anger or retaliation. Parents shared the video with their children. Teachers used it as an example of dignity. Social media pages dedicated it to life lessons, and leadership shared it as a case study in calm authority. The manager, reflecting on the incident, eventually reached out to apologize personally. While the public had already passed judgment, the lesson had already been learned, and not just by him. The thousands who had watched online understood that power is not in shouting, but in self-control. Respect is not demanded, it is given. By the end of the week, the hashtag #RespectOzzy was trending worldwide. Fans celebrated his legacy not just as a musician, but as a human being who could turn an embarrassing, stressful situation into a teachable moment for millions. Ozzy's final message, shared in a brief Instagram post, summed it all up. Respect is free yet priceless. Treat everyone well. Fame and power aren't excuses to do otherwise. And just like that, an ordinary day at the mall became a viral story of humility, dignity, and justice. The manager learned his lesson, the crowd was inspired, and the world was reminded that real strength lies not in authority, but in the quiet power of respect. If you believe everyone deserves respect, type RESPECT in the comments and share this story to inspire others.